we're back for another episode. I'm Greg. It's just me again today, and I'm going to be taking you to two pubs in Wales yet again. There's so many in Wales that we're going to cover. It deserves its own section on its own, and over the coming weeks, we'll carry on with Wales. Hidden away in the village of Cwm near Deserth in Denbighshire, the Blue Lion is one of those pubs that already feels haunted before anyone even tells you the story. Camera describes it as a fascinating historic pub, believed to be the second oldest free house in Wales, and says it was originally used as a boarding house for 17th century monks from the adjacent church. Even without a ghost story, that gives the place real weight. An old Welsh inn tied to the church next door, sitting in a village landscape where history feels close enough to touch. It's exactly the kind of setting where folklore thrives, because the building already carries that sense of age, that memory, something half forgotten lingering in the walls. What really gives the Blue Lion its eerie reputation, though, is the story of John Henry. According to the pub's own haunting account, John Henry lived there when their building was still a farmhouse, sharing it with his father and brother sometime in the 17th century, possibly around 1646. The tale says neighbours heard a violent argument so intense that authorities were summoned. When they arrived, they were reassured that all was well and left. But days later, another disturbance was heard, and when officials came back, John Henry had vanished. His father and brother were there, but he was not. The suggestion passed down through local legend is that John Henry had been murdered and hidden, and that whatever happened to him was never fully put to rest. That is the key to why this story works so well. It's not just a ghost in a pub, it's the idea of an unresolved act of violence tied to the building itself. And from there, haunting becomes personal. Camera says the pub is reputedly haunted by John Henry, who pays regular visits. And the Blue Lion's own account adds the kinds of phenomena you would expect from a traditional inn haunting: rattlings, bangs, and heavy footsteps on old floorboards. Those details matter because they make the presence feel physical, not some distant shadow once seen in a window, but something moving around the place, still active, still making itself known. Other retellings of the legend describe him wandering the interior of the pub, as though he is still somehow bound to the site where he is said to have met his end. Whether you hear that as folklore built up over centuries, or as genuine paranormal testimony, it gives the pub a haunting that feels rooted, feels specific. There's also something especially effective about the Blue Lion because the haunting is not overcomplicated. You have an old building, a village setting, a tale of family violence, a man who disappeared, and then later reports of footsteps and disturbances. It has the structure of a classic pub ghost story in the best possible way. And because the pub itself leans into that history rather than running from it, the legend has been kept alive as part of the identity of the place. When an old inn openly says, in effect, yes, this is a story people tell us about, it helps transform the haunting from a forgotten rumour into a living piece of local character. What makes this one so strong is that it gives you, a listener, a picture rather than just a spooky claim. We've got the monks, the age of the pub, the isolation of the village. Then naturally, the darker heart of the story. John Henry, the argument, the disappearance, and that sense perhaps that he never really left. It's got all the tragedy, atmosphere, and a named ghost, which is always gold in this kind of environment. In a building this old, with this much folklore hanging off it, every unexplained creak or footfall can become part of the story, and that's why the Blue Lion works so well. It feels less like a place where someone once claimed to see a ghost and more like a place where the past itself never quite settled. If the Blue Lion gives you a haunting built around one central figure, then the Salusbury Arms goes in the opposite direction and gives you something even more dramatic. We're now moving to the Salisbury Arms in Tremeirchion in Denbighshire as well. It's a pub said to have been haunted by 7 ghosts at once. This is the sort of detail that instantly grabs attention. Coverage from Wales 247 and the Welsh News Extra say the pub was long recorded as one of the most haunted pubs in North Wales, and that an exorcism some years ago reduced the number of resident spirits from 7 down to 3. Even from before you get into the details, that headline alone does a lot of work. 1 ghost is a pub legend. 7 ghosts makes it sound like an entire supernatural gathering point. The Salisbury Arms also has a kind of historical setting that helps a haunting story breathe. The current community pub, Histories, says that the inn takes its name from the Salusbury family, who were major landowners in this part of the Vale of Clwyd from the 1330s or earlier. That ties the pub into a much deeper local story of gentry, families, shifting power, and centuries of village life. At the same time, the 2019 news coverage describes the pub as featured in the Doomsday Book, which adds to the aura of age, although that should probably be treated carefully as part of the pub's traditional historical reputation, rather than a claim I would state as proven fact about the exact current building. Either way, the point remains the same. This is a place with deep roots, and deep-rooted places tend to accumulate deep-rooted stories. The modern haunting accounts are where the Salisbury Arms really comes alive. According to Wales 24/7, the 3 spirits said to remain after the exorcism include a former landlady, Glenys Taylor, who reportedly died in an upstairs bedroom more than 30 years before the article was published. Staff and customers describe seeing her in a lavender twin set with short grey hair, sitting on the upper bar. But unlike a threatening apparition, she is framed almost as a protective apparition, particularly around the kitchen, which had been her domain. The article says staff felt a reassuring pat on the back when things were going well, as though the old landlady was still watching over the place she loved. That's a brilliant detail for storytelling because it gives the haunting personality. It's not just a nameless shade, it's a former publican still attached to the pub. But the Salisbury is not all comforting ghosts and fond memories. The same report says that one most sinister presence is in the cellar, described as the oldest part of the building and dating back to the 13th century. A former barmaid reportedly claimed that she had been pushed down the steep cellar stairs, and later accounts describe barrels being moved, beer lines being swapped around, and taps being turned on without explanation. The pub's bar manager at the time also painted and pointed to a sump in the floor, suggesting that local belief linked water sources to spiritual activity. Now, whether you treat that as folklore, environmental eeriness, or true paranormal belief, it creates a wonderfully dark image. The oldest part of the pub, underground, damp, tied to movement, danger, and something invisible that may not appreciate being disturbed. Then there's the detail of the little boy in one of the bedrooms, another of the spirits named in the 2019 coverage. That is one of those classic pub hotel ghost motifs that always lands with listeners because it brings vulnerability into the haunting. It suggests that the building is not home to one single tragedy, but to layers of unexplained presence. A landlady upstairs, a hostile force in the cellar, and a child spirit in the bedroom. And that layered nature is exactly why the 7 ghosts reduced to 3 story has lasted. Even the Paranormal database carries the same broad claim, which shows that the tale has spread beyond the original news and into the wider map of British paranormal folklore. If you made it this far, thank you so much. If you like what you're listening to, please share this out to people. Please also drop us a follow. If you can drop us a review on any of your podcast platforms, follow us on social media. We're at linktree.com/Pursuit of the Paranormal. You can find us on all social media platforms as Pursuit of the Paranormal Podcast. Thanks for listening and join us in the next episode of Haunted Pub Crawl.